Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn Bradford, and I would like to welcome you to my Left Turn podcast. What is your left turn? Writing a blog, parenting in a different way, letting go of the old because you are aware of something greater. Left turns are choices we can all make. It's about a willingness to step into the unknown in any area of your life, to trust yourself, to risk creating or trying something new. It's about letting your true uniqueness shine. The greatest people who have lived, artists, statesmen, writers, explorers, musicians, have all been people willing to turn left. What capacities do you have that you have not acknowledged? What would your life and the world be like if you were willing to turn left? Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the Left Turn podcast. I have with me today a beautiful and amazing creator of beauty in the world, Julie Tuton, or Tuton. I'll just read the bio because I think it says an awful lot about Julie. Julie is an artist, jeweler. I have some of her jewelry. It's beautiful. Magical creator and author of Beauty in the Breakup. She's also a mom and has been a certified facilitator of access consciousness for 20 years. Julie uses verbal and energetic treatments to facilitate transformation. Her razor-sharp awareness allows her to cut through to the core of your issues with kindness and caring. She desires to inspire and empower people to be happy, and she loves to create beauty in the world. Thank you so much for being here, Julie.
Thank you for having me, Marilyn.
Yeah. And we can see some of the beauty there. Those are some of your necklaces hanging over there.
Yes, this furniture used to be in my boutique, and after the pandemic, I moved it into my dining room. So now I get to live with all of these and create in my dining room.
That is fantastic. So left turns, where you choose what you know to be true for you, no matter what anybody else thinks. What are some of the bigger left turns in your life?
My goodness. Where do you begin? Right before we started, I was saying that my high school yearbook, I used the quote from Robert Frost, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that made all the difference. And I loved that. And I never really realized how much it resonated with me, I guess, because I thought I was normal and, the fitting in type, but apparently I never was. And, it takes a lifetime, it seems, to come to terms with how different you are.
Yes. It's not encouraged.
No, it is not. And back then, I was always interested in alternative things. When I was 9, I learned Reiki.
Wow.
And did meditation. And this is when my parents got divorced. And divorce was, this was in the 70s. Divorce was this thing that was horrible and broke apart families. That was the idea. And I turned left from that, and I decided that I was not going to be at the effect of something like that, and that I was going to excel in school and be the good kid and, not be a troublemaker. And so that was one of the first ones, because I just didn't want to be the statistic.
Well, it's so cool that you're like, I'm not going to be the effect of that. Forget it. I mean, how many of us as a child, I know I chose often to be the effect of things until I got to a point of like kind of similar. But that's really different and unusual to not have to fit in and be a statistic.
Yeah, it is interesting. I guess I guess I was also willing to be alone and not necessarily have a whole bunch of people around me who agreed with my choices.
Right.
So, yeah, but I enjoyed that space, and I always turned to art. So
Mm.
that was like my place where I could be and create my reality and
Uh-huh.
create the beauty
Uh-huh.
that I wanted to see in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's see what came next. There's so many things. So I always wanted to be an artist,
Mhm.
and everybody said, "Why do you want to be a starving artist? You can't do that." Right? You can't do that. And I don't know, I think everything that I was told I couldn't do,
Yeah.
I was like, I'll show you. I
Yes.
had this fight in me that didn't necessarily work out to my advantage in all the choices that I made. But when I went to college, I was an art major and a psychology major because I had to satisfy my parents, even though I paid for college myself.
Wow.
Because my parents were divorced, and my dad, I don't really remember what happened. He stopped paying child support at a certain point, and my mom was struggling, and my grandparents helped out, and I had to ask them for, the last $2,000 to be able to go at a semester. It was
Wow.
not fun.
No.
Um,
But you had determination, it sounds like.
Apparently, yes. And I I really wanted to go to Rhode Island School of Design because I wanted to be an artist, but because nobody supported my choice,
Mhm.
I ended up going to a school that would work for them and work for me, and
Uh-huh.
where I could get the whole background and not just have it be art based. And then went into the workforce and just did temping and, silly jobs and
Silly
got a
job.
silly jobs. Like I don't even, I was doing graphic design and stuff. I worked for Lotus Software for a while, and I ended up quitting and turning left and choosing my jewelry business. So
Uh-huh.
like while I was working, I was making jewelry and wearing it.
Mhm.
And everybody would stop me and say, "Where did you get that?" And I couldn't find jewelry that I could afford that I wanted to wear.
Uh-huh.
And the stuff that I could afford, I didn't like. So I made my own. And so basically the universe forced me into creating a business, which I did. And I did it on the side for a little while. And then eventually I just jumped,
Mhm.
and it, just went like that. So
Oh, great.
yeah, it's been an amazing adventure. That was in my early 20s. Um, Another thing is the man that I was with, my parents and everybody said, "Don't marry him." And I was like, "I'll show you." So we got married, and we stayed married for 20 years
Wow.
because I was trying to prove my parents wrong.
Oh, I've never done that. Yep.
And we created a beautiful life, beautiful children.
Mhm.
But when I found Access Consciousness about 5 years before I decided that it wasn't working anymore, I used the tools to try to make our relationship better, but I was already aware that it wasn't working. And the more aware you get, the less you can go against your knowing.
Yes, definitely. I think let's say that again. The more aware you get, the less you can go against your knowing. That's a meme, a gem.
Yeah. So I use the tools to be able to separate in the kindest way, because, we created this life together.
Yeah.
And as Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, says, you can create your relationship and you can uncreate your relationship, but it's something that you do together because it is the two of you.
Yeah.
So you don't need to make the other person wrong. You don't have to be right. You don't have to create arguments. You can just agree that it's not working
Mhm.
and undo it in an easier way so that the people around us don't get hurt in the process.
Wow. Would you mention a couple of the most useful tools? I can see people going, how do I do that? How do I do that, Julie?
Yes, I mean, it really is a series of steps, and depending on where a person is and how it shows up for them, because everybody's different, it's like you can go back and forth. So first of all, just unwinding and starting to reclaim the space for you and knowing what's true for you, because when you get into a relationship, you usually give up a lot of yourself. And I know I did. I totally lost who I was until I found Access Consciousness. Um, so there's tools in my book, Beauty in the Breakup, tools for unwinding and finding that space for you. And then there's like really, really, really clearing out the past trauma and all the things that you think were wrong. And with that, I use the clearing statement, the Access Consciousness clearing statement, and bars. Those two are amazing tools to be able to clear out that stuff, because otherwise you're just in reaction.
Yes.
And you're putting your past into your future.
Yes.
So that's step 2 of the book. And step
I would say, I'm just going to interrupt one moment. If
Please.
people don't know it, is it the accessclearingstatement.com? Yeah.
theclearingstatement.com.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I got it correct. Theclearingstatement.com website. That'll tell you all about that.
Yes. And actually, even on my YouTube channel, I have short videos describing different sections of the clearing statement, because
that's
it's
awesome.
just easy, digestible bites. So
nice.
There's that too. So let's see where else. Oh, creating your future and navigating what's actually real and true for you. Those are all the tools that I have in step 3. And one of them is the heavy and light tool, choosing what is light for you rather than what you think is right or not wrong. And this is major. I mean, you may be starting with that first, like, do I stay together? Do I leave? What do I choose? And a lot of people get stuck in the choices because they don't want to choose the wrong thing. They don't know what's going to happen after they make the choice. But you can't prefigure that out.
Oh, you can't.
But you can energetically get awareness of what those choices create.
You better say more about that. Once again, people may have, what did she say?
Right. I know, it's sort of like speaking beyond your brain. So for me, I knew that the relationship wasn't working, but I had always decided that divorce was wrong and I wasn't going to do that. So I was stuck in a no choice situation. So I had a lot of destroying and uncreating of my points of view from childhood and the points of view from society that staying together is right and breaking up is wrong. And once I had space around that, I started to look at and indulge different possibilities. So what would happen? What would it be like if I left the marriage?
Go to questions.
Yeah. And like perceive the energy of the future of that. And then what would it be like for my kids if I chose that? And what would it be like for my husband if I chose that. So I did it for everybody. And then what would it be like if I stayed?
Mm-hmm.
And what would it be like for each of them if I stayed? And like in the beginning, there's so many points of view of staying that I ended up staying for another year. And it just felt so contractive and so heavy for all of us that I thought this can't be it.
Yeah.
So I finally asked again, like you can ask these questions over and over and over again and get different awarenesses. And when I got to the point where I was actually free of the judgment and I could actually get the awareness of what the choice would create, it was like birds singing and the sun came out. And it was like, oh my gosh, like that
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was the leaving. And I thought, how can getting divorced be so light and so expansive?
Right.
But it was.
But it was. And you knew that despite
Yeah.
what you'd been taught.
Mm-hmm. And so the willingness to choose that and the
Yes.
willingness to be the one, to be the bad one, to
Mm-hmm.
leave a marriage, it takes a lot of guts.
Yes, it does.
But when you have you and you trust your awareness and you know what you know,
Mhm.
it's easier than you think. It's actually choosing the lighter path. And it seems to be what the universe supports as well. I guess the universe supports no matter what we choose, if we want to choose heavy or light.
It'll give you more of it if you keep choosing that.
Right. Well, yeah. So
Yeah.
there is no right, there is no wrong. Staying together is not right. Leaving is not right. It's what's right for you.
And the situation. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get that how did the kids play into that? Because that's something that I see a lot of people asking about. Should I stay for the sake of the kids?
Mm. Well, kids are aware.
Yes, they are. And
They
we
are
think
very
that.
aware. And my kids had grown up in Access. They were 3 and 6.
Wow.
So they were super aware. And I always was different. So I always treated them as infinite beings, not babies,
Mm-hmm.
and honored them and gave them choice. So when I told them that this is what we were choosing and that we can't live together anymore and it's just not working, they knew
Mm-hmm.
before we were even having the conversation. And I said, so what do you guys know and what can you contribute to creating this change
Yeah.
with ease?
Yeah.
And we both love you and we'll both be in your lives, like that's not going to change. It's just that mommy and daddy won't live together anymore.
Uh-huh.
And from that space, they were fine. They were like, okay, where do I go to school and where are we going to live and how's this going to work? It was very practical. When my husband talked to them, he cried and they cried for an hour. And I thought,
Oh dear.
that's interesting. But I had to let them have him and
Yes.
his choices
Yes.
and not make it wrong.
Yes.
And that was one of the hardest things because
That's a left turn, not making your part
yes,
wrong, that kind of.
yes. And let them choose what they know.
Yes.
So they lived with me 99% of the time, even though he agreed that he would have them every other weekend and stuff like that changed. The actual separation and divorce and the year following was very easy and he was still an access facilitator, but then he stopped being an access facilitator and then started making access wrong and blaming it and then poisoning the well for the kids. And it was really not easy. For 14 years, I have waited for him to come around and actually be willing to talk to me. He was waiting for me to quit access, which I never chose to do.
Not gonna happen.
And for the most part, I did not make him wrong. And there were probably times when I was like,
Well,
but
was that making him wrong or more of an awareness of what he was choosing, what that was creating, not just for your kids and you, but for him?
Yeah, for
We
sure.
can be really concerned about someone that we care about when we're aware that the choices that they're making are not going to create a great future.
Exactly. And it took him a long time to come out of some of the contraction that he had chosen. But when my son graduated college, we were all going to be together, and the kids had to talk him into being willing to be in the same space with me because
Wow.
he was making a problem. And I remember talking to Gary and saying, what can I do or be for this to be easier? And he said, stop trying to fix it. Let him fuck it up for the kids and let the kids see what he's choosing. He's like, you're not creating any of that. So it was very interesting. I did see him. I gave him a hug. I said, we've created some great kids and I'm grateful. And it was amazing. It was like all those years melted.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think the kids are happier, but we cannot choose to stay in something that doesn't work for us for the kids, because the kids see that as this is how you create a relationship, and it's not honoring. So would you really want your kids to learn that you give yourself up and stay in a marriage that doesn't work? Do you want that for them? So I couldn't.
That's a lovely way to put it. And you're right. We model for our children. And if we're modeling totally sacrificing ourselves and happiness and joy, what does that teach them? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been interesting, and they are wonderful beings, and they know themselves and they trust themselves, and
That's, yeah.
they're making left turns
Mhm.
even, in their early 20s,
Mhm.
which is really cool to see.
And that's what you modeled for them. That's amazing to see kids that have parents who bring them up with the access tools and learning how to trust yourself and knowing that you don't have to do what the world tells you you should do and be. And that's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, I'm grateful. And you never think you're doing it all correctly. But you have to be willing to be a bad parent
Yeah.
to and to choose for you really
Yes.
what works for you. Because if you exclude you're not being a good role model,
Right. And you're not creating the true life you have, the joy and the happiness and the beauty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. Is there anything else you would like to say to people?
It's never too late.
Oh, I like that.
It's never too late to create beauty in your life. I met this lady at a party. Somebody had a jewelry party,
Uh-huh.
and I came and talked about gemstones, and this lady was there. She was in her 70s, and she stayed by her husband, and he had some long debilitating disease, and he had died maybe 2 years previous. And she was so thrilled because she had just met somebody and she was dating this guy.
Oh, Great.
And it turned her whole life around. And she was like, oh my God, she was so happy. And she hadn't been. She had suffered and stayed and been the martyr. So it's like, it doesn't matter how old or young you are, you can start choosing for you.
That is a lot of wisdom in a nutshell. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thanks for having me, Marilyn.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of Left Turn. I wonder what embracing left turns could create in your life. What magical possibilities might show up. Remember, when you choose left turns, you are joining a group of the most creative and brilliant people the world has ever known.